talking about awareness and mindfulness.
Mhm.
I think this is something that's obviously near and dear to your heart. This is something I put a lot of attention to in my life. Over time, there's so much influence, so much information. And I would kind of say, too, when we're talking about awareness and mindfulness, clearly that's a very big subject matter. I believe it can be broken down in many ways. I think even categorically. And if I may, I kind of think that there's if we're talking about, let's just start with awareness. If we're talking about awareness, it's having awareness of the overall, the entirety. I believe that there's, well, even mindfulness too, but then there's the interpersonal relationships we have and how we show up there. There's of course, there's a professional. How are we showing up in a professional world, whether we're leading the charge, whether we're an employee, whatever that looks like. And then I kind of want to say, who we kind of show up to us personally as well too. I'll kind of add that. I don't want to over categorize it, but I believe how we speak to ourselves, how we view that is clearly that's the where it's going to start from. But I think, and that's how we generally show up overall. But there's still a little bit. Sometimes we segment and we become who we need to be for the moment. Um, but I'd say too, like when we kind of threw out awareness and mindfulness, you lit up. You're like, that's a big subject matter for you. So I guess, just kind of starting there a little bit, I guess the words, uh when we say those, does it just expand your mind instantly? Do you have something specific kind of surrounded by the mind, that thought process, or where to even start with those
Sure.
couple thought process?
Sure. Well, I feel, well, first of all, they go totally hand in hand, right? So, like, in when you're mindful, then we can have that state of awareness, right? And I've just been on a really cool journey the last several years, and I learned a lot about awareness. Just earlier this year, back in February, and when so education, I think, is where it starts. So I enrolled in this class, and it talked all about awareness. So in having that awareness, then that's when we can start making the changes, right? So when you're talking about like positive self-talk, um, and things like that, if we're not even aware that about the conversations that we're having with ourselves, how are we going to change it? So, I mean, there's such a power in having that awareness. Um, I mean, that's life changing. So once you do
Yeah.
that, again, then you have the choice, and there's such power in choice.
Yeah, I think I want to say one of the places, again, too, these are those types of subjects that are, I don't want to become, personally, I don't want to communicate it as an overly formalized process, because I personally see it as a different path for each person. Um, but I would say we'll just say one of the starting points that could be for many people is, I think, just beginning in self awareness, self reflection, um, in diving deep. Now, clearly, when you're talking about self reflection,
Mhm.
there's being aware of your thoughts, being aware of your actions, being aware of your speech. Um, when and I know you work with people as well too in some of your coaching. So, do you see any commonalities, or is it really just a fingerprint when you're kind of starting to talk to people about being even just aware, self reflection, and kind of what that means, that introspective um, journey, we'll call it?
Got it. So I believe that it all starts, because you mentioned about like the thoughts and the actions and everything. So it starts with your thoughts, because once you have awareness of your thoughts, I mean, that leads to then how you feel and then the actions that you take. So I talk a lot about like positivity and focusing on the positive, and people were asking like, well, how come we think so negatively all the time? And a lot of it all stems back to like lack of awareness. We don't even know we're thinking that way.
Mm,
So that's why we'll tie into that later, but like by being mindful, we can kind of train our brains to become more aware through different like tangible like modalities. um, but yeah, people had mentioned that before. Like, how do you do that? How do you gain the
yeah.
awareness? And I think it starts with the thoughts
Okay.
internally, the introspective thoughts. And then once you can gain awareness there, again, then there's the power of choice, and like, okay, could I change that thought so I can feel differently and then act differently.
Yeah. And I think too, there's so much under the surface. There's so many of the, obviously the programs that we come through. There's clearly there's so much content, so much communication. I know I've absorbed just at this point, I feel like it's hundreds of thousands of hours and and
Yeah.
between reading, YouTube videos,
Yep.
podcast, and the subject matter is easy to go down a rabbit hole. But I do like the idea of, or the thought process of being aware of the thoughts, being aware of the emotions that are tied to them, and first, I'll just say first identifying that,
Yep.
understanding where those connections points are.
Mhm.
And a lot of it, I think, can be attributed to just our response in the environment. And this is why I think I said, that's kind of why I brought up originally. It's like how we are overall in the world, how we are showing up personally, like family, friends, or just benign interaction with people at a store or wherever that is. And then there's the professional environment, because you get into that, and then there's the tide of, I'll call it a resource of money, how we support our lives. So the stakes change in that environment. So our responses are either going to have more weight, less weight, and uh, and balancing out those, what's the unrooted program that we have, and that response of, is this a quick, am I quick to irritation about it, am I quick to judgment about it, and tempering that is, I'm going to overuse the word process here because for right now, lack of a better term. Um, but I think, I'll also call it giving ourselves grace. I know that there's times where I'll recognize I'm doing something kind of wrong, and I'll clearly at this stage, I'll kind of laugh at myself. I'll be like, oh, what's this? Kind of what's the silly human doing next? I'm like, why did I say that? Where did this come
Where
from?
did that come from?
And
Yeah.
then you can kind of identify that and either soften it, or give myself some grace. I'll be like, I get it. This is where I am today, but I do know where do I want to be. And
Right.
that's obviously some of the stemming too, is that there can be or the trigger, we'll call it, of why people start even on awareness, because it's like, I don't want this. I'm not sure what I want, but I don't want this.
Right.
So
Right.
it'll initiate into that. And I know too, with your the vision program and the bridge project that you're working on
Mhm.
and working with people too. Um, at a surface level, I know that that's a lot of the things you're working with some of your clients.
Yes, exactly. And there's just, again, it's just certain practices that really start building that mindfulness and awareness. It's a process, it's a journey. And I love
Yeah.
when you were saying about like, oh, what is this silly human doing? Again, if until you have awareness that that was your languaging pattern, you can't change it.
Hmm.
So that's how
Yeah.
powerful. It's like that's where we get to start, having that awareness so you can make the change.
Yeah. And you just used a word too, instead of process. You were kind of a practice.
Yes.
So, and that's interesting too, is because the reason I say that is because some people, the you hear from a lot of different influences. You'd be like, all right, get up early, meditation, move your body, and I'm going to put that in the arena of a practice,
Mhm.
being consistent, showing up, changing the pattern that you had the day before. Do you feel that some of the practice, do you feel like that's some of the best way to kind of jar yourself out of it? Or is it really just, or is it thought driven, or is that an accelerator in that process? Can you?
Oh, 100%. It's those consistent practices that was the game changer. That's why I created the Vision Project. I saw the impact that it had on my life. That it's in the consistency. It doesn't have to be long. It's not like you have to sit there and meditate for 20 minutes every day, but the consistency of even just 5 minutes to gain that the mindfulness, the awareness over time, you rewire your brain. It's
Hmm.
so powerful. So that's the whole reason why I created the Vision Project. Uh,
Yeah, I like that too, because I think it's easy to become overwhelmed.
yes,
And again, I'll kind of go back to sometimes, well, I didn't say this exactly, but sometimes we don't know where to start. There's confusing. And sometimes we're like, okay, well, it feels, again, I don't like this, whatever this is.
sure,
I want something different. Maybe I
right,
don't know what it is. Maybe I do know what it is, but it's like, this feels like a big jump. Even if I do this to this feels like a big jump, but by you saying too, just be 5 minutes. I think that's even too, let's put it into physical format is like um, a little bit of movement every day
Yeah.
or a walk. Something very simple makes a big impact in people's lives,
Huge.
depending on I think at any level. I don't think it's a dependency on where you're at. Any type of just staying in the physical realm for that moment, any type of movement. Now translate that into being aware. I think
Mhm.
I think sometimes we can get stuck in our programs of what we do. We get up, we shower, we get our coffee, whatever those little steps are. Then we get in the car. Joe Dispenza talks about it like that. Then we drive the same way to work every single day. Before you know it, you're just on autopilot, and it's Sunday. Then it's all of a sudden it's Saturday the next day. So I think, so then in the thought process is meditation.
Mhm.
Um, I guess, what are some of the other things? I mean, we can jar ourselves out of, I think that some, formalized meditation or, there's different practices of meditation. Or is it just being quiet? I mean, is that,
That's pretty much what it is. And you made a good point that, we tend to just be such creatures of habit and just go on autopilot. So if we can make intentional small changes and incorporate these great practices and get to the point where they become on autopilot, those are game changers. So before I talk about some of the other practices, I just thought of this. I've worked with people before. They're like, "Oh man, I was just so busy today. I didn't have time to meditate." And my thought is like, you don't have time not to meditate. Just stepping back to take those 5 minutes before you leave the door, like before you leave out, like you are just going to gain your composure, set that intention. You will be in such a better place by spending those 5 minutes. You will gain 30 minutes, an hour, just by being more grounded, more focused, more relaxed. Like it's amazing the results that ensue. The,
yeah, I'll say it again. I do appreciate you saying the 5 minutes because I remember too is some of those, just years and years ago, it was like there was a conceptual idea, at least that I had, or whatever influence or introduction I had into the idea of meditation was, it was you had to be on the top of a mountain, your legs crossed, back straight, and you had to hold that pose for somewhere between 1 and 12 hours, and it had to be this massive thing, and that's not the case.
no, not
I
at all. I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought that up because this is how I got started. I'm happy to share my journey with you and
yeah,
how it's
please do.
been. And hopefully this serves our audience here. It all started where when I was doing some reflection, I'm like, oh my gosh, the most successful people in the world, they all talk about meditation, meditation. Gosh, why am I not doing it? And I figured out why I wasn't doing it. And then I put things in place. So I started doing it. So first I thought, oh my gosh, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong. My mind
Mhm.
wanders.
Yeah.
So maybe I just get frustrated and give up. And you were asking how I do it. And yes, it's just about being still. So it's okay if your mind wanders. It's just taking that 5 minutes to say, okay, I'm going in with the intention to not think about what I'm doing later today. I just want to be still. I want to sit. And then I started getting into guided meditations. That really served me because then I would search by, I use an app called Insight Timer. For me, that's my favorite. I know there's a ton of apps on there like Headspace and a ton of them. I love Mindfulness Timer because you can actually sort by time. So you can find like 3 minute, 5 minute, real short meditations. So if this is something that's new to you and you have a hard time focusing for a long period of time, start there. And then you can also search by whatever result you're looking for. So I want confidence. I want peace. I don't want to have fear. I don't want to have anxiety. Like you can search for what you're looking for and it
Mm.
pulls up a quick guided meditation. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of fun. This actually isn't that hard. And giving yourself grace and compassion, like you said, if you do see your mind wandering, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's a practice. It's a practice. They
Yeah.
call it that for a reason. And then the second thing that really served me as well, you mentioned motor memory, get up, brush your teeth, do all that. I started incorporating that into my routine. So after I
Mm.
brushed my teeth in the morning, I would walk down, I would sit on the same place, on the same couch, and just made it a routine. Like it just became a part of my day. So then I wouldn't say, oh, I didn't have time to do it. I would do it right after I brushed my teeth. Like there's no excuse. And I'm like,
Absolutely.
wow, I started noticing remarkable results. And it's just short but consistent.
Yeah, I love that. I really do because I'm just going to go back to it. I think that it's it's an overwhelming. It feels daunting
Mhm.
when you're not doing something like that. And again, too, is I really believe that there was a, I don't know if it was just how I came across it, or if on the whole it was presented in such a way original, I'm talking years and years ago, is it seemed to be like, oh, you had to do it for an hour, you had to do it for half a day, and otherwise you're not doing it right.
Right.
So, which gets into another subject we can touch on too, is so yeah, I'm going to end there because with that subject, because I feel really that encapsulates it. I don't think it has to be a lot. You can
Mhm.
always make time for what's important. If you're
Yes.
making yourself a priority, there's always enough time in the day. There,
Yeah, and if I could say just one other thing, what you said is what I hear the majority of people say. They're afraid, they're almost like afraid of it. Like I think I'm doing it wrong. I don't know where to start. And yeah, I would just say like simple, short, don't even, think about I'm doing it wrong. Just start by that, incorporating that into your day. 5 minutes.
yeah,
I'm going to intend, and it's also setting the intention for the day. Like you're not thinking of all these things, you're calming yourself. You can give that's actually another great way actually to like set an intention. What do I want my day to look like? I want today to be peaceful. I want like one word.
yeah,
I want today to be inspirational. I want today to be loving. Like set one word, set the intention, just sit and breathe. Don't
yeah,
even worry about how, like a lot of people, I mean, again, there's great breathing practices out there. Awesome. But don't even worry about that. Just breathe. Just sit there and just concentrate, focus on your breath, breathe in, breathe out, and just be still.
yeah. I always, I don't want to say struggled. Maybe that's not the right word. A lot of anxiety.
Okay.
So in that in that window is, if there's anxiety, there's impatience, and again, doing it wrong. I want this to this. So I'd start stacking things in my intentions. So it took a long time for me to just, and I'll say, I'm okay right now. Like it
Uh-huh.
actually got to that point where I had so much anxiety and it was just, the world felt so heavy in different times of my life, different seasons of my life, that I had to stop and be like, I'm okay right now. Like literally to the point where it was almost like a very survival esque type of thought, the red root chakra,
Mhm.
very worldly fixed. I'm okay right now. I'm not going to
Yeah,
get eaten by a bear.
yeah.
Nobody's busting on my door. I'm okay right now. Literally
That's
this moment. And
that's
hold that,
the presence.
even
You're
if it's
just
just a
being
minute.
present
Yeah.
that's the power. If we can stay in the present moment, that eliminates so much of the anxiety. And then
Hmm.
that's, I believe mindfulness is basically just saying being in the present moment. If you're in the now, you're constantly being mindful.
Yeah.
Mm.
And and I do like to backtracking a little bit on awareness and mindfulness. I do like that you actually, I think you put mindfulness first, but it was almost like kind of just being, and then awareness, or vice versa, because it's a little bit of, they can really kind of feed into each other.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I did write a couple notes before we kind of started about awareness and mindfulness too. And this be a whole litany. Let's just talk about mindfulness just a little bit. Which is what we already touched on, is kind of present moment awareness,
Mhm.
acceptance, and
Mhm.
maybe we can elaborate on a couple of these too. But then you get into things like non-judgmental, not in the external world, obviously from a global event to somebody specific in our life to ourselves. I think
Ourselves,
that's
yeah,
some of it too. Heavy judgment. Nobody's tougher on me than me.
right.
I mean, I don't know. Most people are like that. I can't speak for everybody, I think, but I think a lot of people are like that.
Yes,
We're tougher. We talk much harsher and much rougher with ourselves,
than we would to anyone
than
else.
to anybody else.
Yeah, I
For
experience that same thing too,
Yeah,
and what I hear from other people. Absolutely.
yeah. And then under that mindfulness too is, and you touched on this: focus, intention,
Mhm.
attention, and intentions.
Mhm.
Um, of course, compassion and kindness, mindful actions. Where do we step? Sometimes it's just what's that not one next step that we can kind of do? What's a bigger steps that we can take? The equanimity, empathy, letting go, just sensory awareness, field awareness. And this is what the power of being present can
Yes.
can give us. It can bring us back. And I'm sure, I don't want to assume that anybody that's listening to this has heard this, is about, kind of where, if we're stressed about the future or we're stressed about the past, what those mean. I'm sure you've kind of heard those quotes as far as, if we're don't have faith in the future, don't have, or if it's in the past, we're kind of, fixed on and carrying those thoughts forward with us. So I guess, jumping into a little bit of that,
Mhm.
let's jump on a sense of letting go. So, letting go, holding on. In your experience too, or even maybe your personal experience,
Mhm.
we with the meditation, with being present, do you feel like some of that melted away, or was some of it still very intentional, very, I'll just call it kind of grinding the gears down of shaving off some of those letting go points that were required to let go for you? Or did you have some moments where it kind of just started to just feel this melt away? Now, I can say that in a sense personally because I feel like I've experienced both. Some stuff I felt like I really had to chip away at
Sure.
to kind of let go, and other things just kind of dissipated. The energy was just transmuted.
Amazing. So from my experience, it's been I equate it to like going to the gym for your brain, right? The more I did it, the easier it became. So then I found a lot of, yeah, that the more I meditated, the more I was staying present on a daily basis. So,
Mhm.
and then yeah, I just became very practiced at it to where it does kind of like it just melts away and I'm easily, and again, I'm human, right? Life's,
Mhm.
things happen and life's
Absolutely.
gonna life, but I can let things go way more easily because I've been very practiced at stop, accepting it is what it is, surrendering to the certain, to the moment and realizing that I have the power and the choice to shift my thoughts, which will lead me to a better feeling place. I
Yeah.
also do that. I mean, I have so many different tools. Like, and one of those tools is gratitude, because like when you're not feeling in a good place, it's hard to shift. But if you can
Yeah.
like stop and say, okay, I'm going to focus on something I'm grateful for. Because no matter what's going on, there's something, there's always
Yeah.
something. Even if it's like, I'm grateful, I could just take a deep breath right now. And like you said, I'm safe in this moment. I'm fine in this moment. And then shift. But anyways,
Yeah.
sorry, that's probably a long
No, that's
explanation, but it's in the practice. It's in the consistent
yeah.
practice. It's a game changer.
I think that it's interesting with the gratitude. So I found to have empathy, to understand and have compassion
Mhm.
for my surroundings. I found that to be a much easier process. And I don't want to put too much judgment on this, but I want to say for many years, it's not that I wasn't grateful,
Mhm.
but for some reason, the gratitude, it was a little more rigid for me, a little more prickly, for
Okay.
some reason. And maybe there was, not maybe there was, if I'm to break it down, there was some bitterness in there. There was some, personal hurdles and more stressful aspects of my in seasons of my life. And the gratitude for me, this is my personal one, was a little tougher. But I always felt it very easy to be empathetic and have compassion for my surroundings. And even if somebody was a little mean or aggressive or whatever, however you'd want to classify that as, I didn't allow that to absorb. Um, Again, that's me. I wasn't concerned. But the gratitude, I don't know. It was like, yeah, I'm thankful for everything. It wasn't that I wasn't that
So,
angry,
okay, no,
but
this is
gratitude was a
interesting.
little bit
I
different.
like this conversation. I think this is going to be really helpful. So, is it more like it sounds like you're like, yes, I'm grateful, but like maybe weren't able to access that emotional connection of like the
Correct.
feeling
Yeah,
of
that's
gratitude.
exactly it.
So you're like, yeah,
That's a very
I'm
good.
grateful. I'm grateful for, for this moment, but
Yeah.
having, okay,
So
got it.
so it was there was a cognitive awareness
Right.
that I was grateful.
Okay.
I'm grateful. I have my wife, my kids, roof over my head. I'm grateful. I'm grateful, alive, health. Da, da, da.
Sure.
I'm grateful. Cognitive awareness of the of the things I can be grateful for. There
Sure.
was an emotional connection to it because some of it was I don't want this, whatever this is now, and the emotional attachment outweighed my, I guess I don't want to say inherent ability. That's not right. Is that at the time the emotional capacity to probably allow that in my heart, in my mind, and it was that. So it was a heavy cognitive awareness. I knew everything that I could be grateful for, but the emotional connection. There was a. I still was working through a gap. I'm not saying in everything. Like, don't get me
Sure.
wrong. I wasn't walking around all cranky about everything,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm
No, I
saying
understand. Hmm.
as a collective, I felt like that process and path and practice was definitely more work. And I think I brought that up before. It felt like I had to kind of chip away at that one more than other things. It was
Okay.
easier for me to have compassion for other people, the world, even and this is going to sound weird, even myself, and have some grace. But the being thankful, but some of that too, then maybe that's if I'm going to just put myself on the on the observation block here, maybe there was just heavy critical. It was criticism. I was critical. I was critically thinking of myself of not being the whole that I wanted to be. So I
Amazing.
was
And
harsher to
that's
myself,
great
which I said
awareness right
before.
there.
Yeah,
Right
yeah,
there.
that's a
You
sense of
just
awareness.
gained awareness. Huh. Maybe I wasn't able to access the gratitude because of my thinking, my being
I was being too
critical.
critical.
Yeah. So,
I was being too judgmental on myself.
yep.
I was, weighing myself against the whatever proverbial standards of the my perceived world or my, my idyllic position that I should be in versus where I'm at today, type of thing.
Yep.
So,
And in that
I,
awareness, again, you have the power to make a shift. So
yeah,
in
and
my
it,
like, so something that I would, recommend or invite you to do. So like if you're doing some type of guided meditation. So I would say, incorporating this into the morning practice. Okay, today I'm feeling X, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling judgmental, I'm feeling so whatever you're feeling, to find a brief meditation that kind of I shouldn't say that kind of, that does focus on the result that you want. So whether that's presence, whether that's openness, whether that's acceptance, whatever that is, you do a short meditation. And then after that, I like stacking my practices. Again, it doesn't take long to take 2 minutes that after you're done with that meditation to then access something that you're grateful for. And
mhm.
maybe it starts out with just the cognizant, awareness of it. And then over time, we start building that emotional connection to it. And then once you start doing that, you feel like your vibrational frequency starts increasing. And then you just notice all these great things. You'll just notice some
Sure,
forward momentum.
synchronicities, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Kind of creating our own luck in certain
Yeah.
environments or attracting just the right energies and human
Yeah.
beings around us.
Exactly.
And I kind of wanted to, and I shared that just as an example because I think people get stuck on needs to be this, then this, then this, and then this. I think that's it's not. I would say just again from a personal perspective, I think sometimes are people like, well, no, I've got that one down, but I don't have this one down. And it's like, well, the next person is going to maybe have the opposite. So that's all it was. It was just a recognition of it's not a hard, it's not a hard line. I think that there's ways and methodologies to go about it and
Yeah.
maybe stair step it. Absolutely. Because you're going to see where maybe those struggle points, if I'm on the struggle bus somewhere or, those are the things you can kind of start to work through, and then usually too is like I think that when talking to people or working through that is that those are those confusion points, those there's dark clouds. It's either A, they can't get past that, or B, they kind of jump over it and kind of backtracking in that window.
Yeah.
So
Yep. And yeah,
I
that's
think
cool.
yeah,
And again, so what you basically mentioned, there's power in having that awareness, and then you can try to figure out, okay, cool, what tools might support me in overcoming that, and not just
yeah.
bypassing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about, and then how about this? How about fear of change? I mean, which ties into the same thing. This isn't novel, what I just said, but it's like the fear of change. So there's the attachment to the identity of that. And again, maybe we have awareness, maybe we have recognition that maybe, but there's still that sense of, and then not everything feels right or wrong. I think when you become very in tuned, I do believe that you are quicker, or maybe the response or the sensitivity can feel, it's not always that black and white type of binary. So I would say that there's things that there's aspects of it that we're kind of doing right. I'm kind of convoluting this a little bit, but is there's aspects of how we show up in maybe a certain category. Again, I'll go back to the how we show up with our family versus how we show up in our professional work. And in that this imaginary scenario, I have it nailed down in my professional world, but then it's like showing up to my family, and all of a sudden it feels like I fell apart in the same window of compassion or empathy or whatever that window is, or
Uh,
patience, or you know. So um, I think that it's where to go with that is that fixed on the identify of who I am in these categories. So I'll say that sometimes the practice might not just be the overall, might have to kind of focus on or narrow down is how you're showing up in different areas of your life. And I guess there's the security of how you've done it yesterday. So you're going to continually show up in that same mindset, activities. Your communication is going to be the same, um, but the output, and I think the benchmark is the output. I guess is where do you want to be in this aspect of your life. So if there is, I want to change. Again, we'll go back to that thing. I don't want this. I want to change.
uh,
um, Identifying sometimes it's not necessarily a deficiency, sometimes it's a fear, or it's a true identification. I'm so identified with this character that I show up every time, even if it doesn't feel authentic. I'm so fixed on this character that I show up in, at this, because maybe it's worked here. uh, I guess breaking that down, does it, in your opinion or your mindset, does it still start in the same place, just identifying the thoughts first?
yeah, so I would say it starts from a place of reflection, right? And in identifying those thoughts. So again, that so if you intentionally take the time to do reflection, whether that's before you go to bed or in the morning, I find those are the two best times to do it, right? That's when things tend to like calm down. But then when you can reflect and in the reflection you gain the awareness, like you had mentioned, like, oh, maybe I'm showing up great at work but not so great at home, like identifying what that is and then saying, okay, well, what's the result that I want? Again, this is all just coming from my experience. Once I did the reflection and then figured out what I want, again, I found such a power. My tools are like meditation and gratitude. I would then say, okay, I want more presence. I want more confidence. I'm showing up scattered. I want to be more present. I'm showing up this way. I want to incorporate this. And then I take it back and I just let it's that surrendering. Then I just allow myself to just through the consistency of the meditation, let my brain start rewiring itself.
I
That's
love
what's
it.
been
Yeah.
effective for me.
No, I think I genuinely, I kind of steered it in that way, or my side of it, not even steered it that way. That's not right. Is I brought it that way because I had a feeling that's where you were going to go back to, and that's um, that is an incredible way to look at it. Is go back and like just work on the basics. Start there. It's just
Mhm.
a small amount. It's not overwhelming. It's. I'm not going to say it's not hard, but it's being consistent and going back to the default.
It's simple, not easy type
Yeah,
deal, right?
simple, not easy.
Yeah,
Please, yeah.
and
Thank
to
you for
simplify it even more, how I like to look at it is like kind of like what worked, what didn't work, what do I get to add? Like if you ended your day that way, like, okay, cool. And what worked? Okay, great. At work, I was very present. I was very connected with my clients. I was very, what worked? Okay, great. Now I have that awareness. What didn't work? I got very scattered leaving the office. Okay, great. So then what can I add? And especially if you can take that down to very simple root ways of being and kind of reflect that way, that's been super powerful. I've been practicing that.
Amazing. No, absolutely love it. I don't even want to add to that. So I was going to say too, there was another thing as I was kind of thinking about as we were kind of talking, bantering some of this is, I guess there's also, I'm going to just say there's an external influence as well too.
Mhm.
We can control our response. We
Right.
can stop and pause a moment, but you can't control other people.
Right.
Can't control your surroundings. And there's things in this world that are just out of the realm of that.
Mhm.
You know, you can do things to take yourself out of situations and or work yourself backwards, which all fine. Um, but I think too that I don't want to say a thing is there are things of external validations and still appeasing. Now I know that it's going to come back to a very simple way, and we're going to default back to being mindful, stop, think, and identify. Um, but these, there's a lot of people that you probably have worked with too that whether they're aware of it or not, their external environment has had an incredible impact and influence or created traumas and I guess uh, now you're going to go back to it, I know, but is this going to come back to that similar type of thing of the awareness, or is there a little bit different path when we're talking about heavy external influences into the world?
Are you talking more about like a specific instance that pops up during the day, or are you
I think
talking about
it's
more
kind
like
of a
an
little bit of both.
ongoing?
Yeah, I think we can kind of play out a couple different things in the sense of is it here? We'll do this. Let's start interpersonal. You know, I'm mean to you, Carolyn. You're terrible, and you know you've done a lot of bad things today. That wasn't a very good yelling at
No,
you,
no,
but
no.
uh,
So we have this
but
encounter today.
yeah,
Okay, got
you
it.
have. Let's just say we'll start at interpersonal communication. Let's start there. Now,
Got it.
I'm going to actually add to this a little bit because this is something that I am working on. Well, we're all working on books, communication, and everything else. But one of them is communication identifiers and a little bit of a tool. So I don't mean to kind of hijack this
That's
moment,
fine.
but one of it is it kind of triggered the memory of this is that because I was talking about the interpersonal in a work situation specifically. What some of the stuff I've worked with people in internal in a corporate environment is. Identifying kind of where's the field awareness. So somebody comes at you in a sense like this, or there's a confusing or conflated information, and they're talking about something very obscure, and then they're talking about something specific, and then they're talking this, and they're talking strategy, and now it's tactical, and one of the things too is that a little bit of a tool that I've kind of shared with people is, first, it's no order in this, but there's kind of three main focuses. I've kind of broken it down to a little bit. And this is an oversimplification because it expands on this. But one is kind of the focal point. Are we talking about the 32,000 foot view, the overly strategic thinking? Are we talking about very technical, the boots on the ground, or some type of, we're under the proverbial bus, talking about the nuts and the bolts? And then another one would be, are we kind of talking, is this creative talk? Is this logical talk? And is left brain, right brain? What are we, kind of where is this other person kind of coming from? And another one would be are we talking about past, present, future? So you have time in there. And I found that kind of having a little bit of frame. We do this inherently as human beings anyway. We all are kind of trying to identify if we're talking to somebody who's a little bit off kiltered or upset or emotional. And generally, it has nothing to do with us. It's just them, and they're trying to, somehow coalesce. Is you can kind of stop the situation and ask, are we talking strategic, or are we, so these identifiers. So some of it is kind of navigating our way through there. Now, this is also a practice of being able to, where I'm going to tie it back to what we were talking about, and this is why I was thinking about it, is because is being present. When our mind is calmer, we're able to do things like this.
Yeah.
It's not exactly like I just explained it, because we do things like this where we're identifying where in this interpersonal made up scenario where somebody's either upset or maybe they're trying to manipulate the situation, or is we're trying to identify where that is. But if you're frantic and your thoughts are scattered
Right.
because you're fixed on the variable aspects of your, uh, we'll just call them, we'll call them baggage in a
Yeah.
sense too, but is I found that when I'm more present,
Mhm.
I'm able to identify this, and either a just you have to make the determinations. Do I retreat? Do I talk through this and whatever else? But that's a different subject. That's a little further. But I would come back to being present in the moment are
Uh-huh.
going to be able to help you have these where I started with this was kind of that external influence. This is going to help you in your world and how you show up, how you communicate, and how you can remain present. So things like you're talking about, very, very simple, setting the day out, very slowing the
In the
mind.
very beginning in the morning, and
Yeah,
that consistency has helped me in a situation like what you just explained, where you can like take a, I could take a deep breath. And again, it's like, okay, I want to respond versus react, right? So when you
hmm,
don't have presence and awareness, we tend to just react. Like you come at
absolutely.
me saying, "Oh my gosh, you're bad, you're evil," and you're like, "Whoa," you initially just want to like attack back, and not necessarily. I don't know,
Or
maybe
defend, or just defend.
correct. I
Yeah,
would say defend
or
as well, or
deflect. I mean, there's all sorts of psychological tools and human
right,
behavior tools that we use. We use deflect, defend,
sure.
reattack. All those things. But
Any of
to
those
your
that
point,
may naturally come up. So
yeah,
everyone, it may be different for everyone. Like, right, one may want to attack, one may
yeah,
want to defend.
the fight or flight type of
Correct.
responses.
Right.
Yeah,
So what I see, I'm so, because of my daily practices, I'm very cognizant of my mindset and my presence and reaction. So I've learned to become, just very solution oriented. Try to, take a step back, and whatever result I want to see in that person, I become that, right? So if I
yeah.
want that person to be more calm and communicate, I get to remain calm and communicate. So then it's dropping into what you want to see in that other individual. So I'm taking ownership of that, right? So it's like, okay, if this person's very frantic and coming at me, it's like, okay, well, I want to see them be more calm. So in my way of being, become more calm, and I'm also very like solution oriented. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what are you looking for? Like what what is the result that you're looking for? And it's having that communication, but ultimately
And
it comes by, and who I am in that moment is going to affect how that person responds to me. So
100%.
yeah. So
Yeah,
again, so through the practices of, meditation and gratitude and having awareness and mindfulness, it becomes more, I'm able to embody that easier.
yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually become, even that description you kind of gave too about the solution oriented,
Mm.
you're actually going to help this other human
Yeah.
being.
Mhm.
So you're going to help because they might not know what they're trying to get at either. In this kind of
Exactly.
made up scenario that I threw at,
Yeah.
you know, I I know I concocted it, but still in this general scenario, but we've all experienced these types of things.
Yeah.
They may not know where they're coming from. They're like, I don't know. I'm talking about something specific. I'm upset about the general aspect of
Right.
it. And if I have some creative thoughts here, but logically it's over here. And
Yeah.
there's this manic situation. And maybe it's not totally that dramatic, but there is a sense of when you help that solution oriented person,
Mhm.
because again, you're present, you're able to
Yeah. Like,
slow,
what are you looking
take an
for?
internal breath, whether that's energetically, whether it's physical, whatever that is,
Mhm.
and effectively come back in, re-engage into it, and help them identify what are we talking about in that sense, not in a derogatory way, but just truly help. I want to help you identify this.
Yes.
Where can we start to pinpoint this?
Exactly.
And then either we both have a takeaway, or the result of that can be a million different things,
Sure.
um, but I there's a real power in that, and to make the connections is that's why we're making these connection points. And again, in this drawn out conversation of being not drawn out, but coming back to this present moment.
Sure. And I
um,
do want to address too that, again, simple, not easy, to not be triggered by a situation. If someone comes at you running and yelling at you, I get it. A lot of our emotions want to kick in, and we do instinctively like want to react. So
yeah,
again, I can't emphasize enough that the power comes from staying in this work daily.
yeah,
That's how we
I
we start building that to be able to not get triggered.
yeah, absolutely,
It's the power of, and again, I don't spend hours a day doing this, but it's the consistency. Every single day I do my meditation, I do my gratitude, like, and
yeah,
I do other little things too, but that's where the power is. And
absolutely.
Beautiful.
I'll play with it one more time. One more thing too is because there's the scenario too that is where somebody's trying to get you. They're almost an advocate or lobbying, I'll call it, or
Okay.
cheerleading for their opinion. So they're going to give you a bunch of information
Uh-huh.
about, and don't you agree? So I did this, and they said this. Don't you agree? So there's some of those things of the discernment. You're like, okay, well, I'm only hearing this. Your mind's quiet enough to be able to absorb what's happening and truly gain perspective. So I, again, another made up scenario, but these are real world things that I believe having the mindset and the calmness is going to help you, any of us interact in the world of influenced or external environments.
Got it.